And away we go. It is the nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, the live Thursday night edition. You know the deal, www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Go to the app. They will deliver right to your front door, pretty much anywhere inside the 275 loop. Or you can go down to Dayton, Kentucky, tell them to pump it up, tell them Wes Miller sent you, and you can save 15% off of your order. All right, let's get this show on the road. I'm Chad Brendel. He's Aaron Smith. Oh, there's a special guest in the house today. Cincinnati head basketball coach, Wes Miller. Coach, how are you? Welcome to the program.
Good evening. Good. Glad to be here as always, Chad.
How's life? I always used to joke around with Mick that like Mick was one person from April to the day that practice starts, and then another person from the day practice starts until like the final horn of the season. Is that Wes Miller? Like the day you go walk in on that first practice, you're like, all right.
Well, you've known me for 2 years now, so I think you'd probably say that's not how I am. And not to knock anybody that is that way, Mick or anybody else, but I probably, pretty consistent. Where I'm a little different is I just enjoy this time of the year a whole lot more. I'm happier, and certainly in October. October is my favorite month of the year because, and I love the games. I mean, I look forward to them like everybody, but October's great because we get to actually teach every day. We get to teach every single day. It is like it is the most important time for what we love to do, which is coach basketball on the floor. So I look forward to it. I still get nervous the night before the first practice of the year. And we do the stuff in the summer now, right? We do the summer, the fall. It's not as climactic as it was years and years ago when I first got into coaching, but I still couldn't sleep the night before our first practice last Tuesday. And this is a great time of the year. I think if anything, I'm just more locked in and more focused on basketball, but that's generally a happier thing for me.
Victor locked in.
That's what Victor locked in. He probably, my new thing with Victor, I haven't shared this publicly yet, but if anybody remembers the show Entourage, which was right kind of in my college era there,
yep.
The Johnny Drama character, the Victory. So I always give Victor a victory for Victor every day that I see him. There you go. So, and that's kind of how I try to do it. I will not do that on the internet, but
I'll let you do that, Aaron. He's good.
So I finally showed him a clip of that on YouTube the other day because he had no idea where I was coming from. But maybe he'll go back and watch Entourage. I don't know.
Vic's a funny guy. I think you would love Entourage.
Vic is, by the way, Vic is a comedian. I'm not saying that in jest. He is actually done stand-up.
A stand-up comedian.
Yeah, he's hilarious, and his English has gotten so much better. So he's even funnier in English now.
You've done worse things on the internet, though. You've grittied. We've all seen that, and some of the dances you've done with different recruits over the last couple of years. We've seen it, Coach.
Yeah, well, we reserve that for recruiting, fellas. Okay. I love you guys, but you guys don't get that.
I want to get to something real quick before we get into the basketball, like team stuff. Recruiting calendar changes that were passed down yesterday. No live periods for coaches in April. 1 in May, 2 kind of in June, and then 2 in July. Does it feel like you guys are out on the road watching high school guys less? And is that just in a lot of ways because April has become portal season and being on campus is where you need to be for April?
Honestly, Chad, I didn't even see the changes. Somebody mentioned they made some changes, and it's I'm embarrassed to say it. I think it may say how locked in I am to coaching right now on our team, but I've been vocal that we needed to change the calendar. It just didn't make sense. We made so many changes to our profession and to the game with NIL and transfer portal and the COVID. There's so many other things that have changed what this is over the last 2 or 3 years that we needed to change kind of the way our calendar was structured to go out and recruit, and then also be on campus with our players. So I as loud and as I've been and publicly loud over the course of the last year with that. I probably should know more what's happened in the last 24 hours than you. So I probably need to go look at it to speak in real depth about it. But I do feel that going out in April, you get those 2 weekends the last couple of years to go evaluate high school kids on the AAU circuit, which it's so valuable to go out on those AAU circuits and see those kids in those environments. But we were trying to do that in April at the same time that we're trying to retain players and we're trying to recruit the transfer portal. And it just felt like we were trying to do way too many things at once. Like you couldn't kind of catch your tail, and something had to give. And what was giving was we weren't really spending enough time evaluating those kids at those summer tournaments, because your current players and those transfer portal kids you're recruiting were just taking precedence, but based on the immediate need there. So I do like that they've kind of figured out that month of April has changed a lot. I hope they don't take away our ability while doing that to go out and watch the AAU events, because again, we do get a lot out of that. But I got to look at it to kind of sort through it.
It's basically 1 week less. They took away 2 weeks in April and put in 1 week in May. That wasn't there previously. But I tried to talk about this last night a little bit. Like in April, coaches just weren't paying attention to the games. They either weren't there because they were hosting, primary transfer portal targets that weekend on their campus, or if they were there, they were on the phone trying to get transfer targets or find a way what was going on in the portal. Like the games were happening, but everybody it felt like was 3/4 checked out.
Yeah, I some of that's true, personally, and it not intentionally, but sometimes I wasn't on the road, and you're going, where the heck's, probably on Twitter, making me look bad. So where the heck's Coach Miller? He should be out there looking at our top targets, and I want to be, but we were hosting Landers Nolly, on a big weekend, or we were hosting Simos Lukosius, and so those are, I was meeting with this year. I remember I was meeting with CJ Frederick right when he went in the transfer portal. So we're doing that, and now I'm not out watching games. And then you get out to watch those games, and you might be on your phone or out in the parking lot most of the time, because you're dealing with those kids you're trying to recruit. And then obviously your current players now. It takes a lot of precedence to spend time with them that time of year and make sure that you're recruiting them back to your program as well.
What's the most difficult thing that you've had to navigate as far as changes over the course of the last couple of years? Because there's been so many changes between NIL, between the transfer portal, all of that. And just, it seems like every day there's something new popping up, as even just with the portal changing their dates and all of that, just within the last, 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever it's been.
Yeah, Aaron, you guys want to do a show just on that? We could probably. I mean, there's so many things that have changed in such a short period of time. It's been like rapid change, right?
Right.
And we could, COVID in itself changed every industry everywhere. And I think the year that I got here, we had just come out of COVID. I got the job in May, and I mean, we played in the NCAA tournament 5-6 weeks before that with people in masks and nobody in the arena. I mean, so coming out of COVID was a transition. Going into COVID, coming out, that was a transition, which affected our sport in so many ways. How kids, it was really interesting coaching college kids the couple years after COVID, because you had college players that had played college basketball and they'd never been to an in-person class. Right. Like some of the guys that I coached at Cincinnati when I first got here had been here for a couple of years, but had never walked through campus. They couldn't tell you where an academic building was, not because they weren't doing their schoolwork, but because everything was online. They hadn't interacted. They didn't know anybody. They hadn't interacted with the community. I mean, there's so many effects of COVID that have created a lot of change. NIL is probably the one that we all hear the most about, but that's obviously, changed the way a lot of things are done. It's changed a lot of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. The transfer portal, so much of it. I think what we've tried to do, and what I've really tried to do, is not complain about it. Some of these rapid changes have, led to some frustration at times. But instead of getting frustrated and complaining and dwelling on it, let's just pivot. Let's adjust. Let's keep figuring it out. And I think that's the mentality we've had, and we still have that mentality. And as you mentioned, there's still rapid changes that are going on in our sport and in college athletics. And by the way, that's going to continue to happen, I believe, for the next 2 or 3 years. I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see rapid swings, with continuing conference realignment and things of that nature and NIL legislation. And I can try to predict, but I just think we have to keep pivoting. We can't dwell. We can't complain. And I know that's how we're going to approach it with the basketball staff.
Swimming upstream is not going to get you anywhere because the next change is going to happen while you're fighting the last, and then you're 2 changes behind.
Yeah, and let me say this, guys. Like the neat thing with all this other stuff that the job is so much different than it was 4 years ago. It just is what it is. Right. But the neat thing, and this is again goes back to like October for me. They're still young people. And they coaching basketball, still coaching basketball, practice is still practice, interacting with them and helping them grow. It's still the same. The stuff that you love about coaching, that you're passionate about, it's still there. There's just a lot of other stuff that we deal with now that maybe you didn't deal with, 4 or 5 years ago.
Let's get to the 2023-24 Bearcats. There we go. I missed a year. The last year's, man, we're starting over.
Right. I'd love to have David DeJulius back for another year. So if we do that,
that's kind of where I want to start. Like, you're in one of those spots. You're replacing 4 of your top 5 scorers, 2 guys that had really, really strong senior seasons last year. You've got 7 new players. You've got 6 returning players. What is this like when you're looking at this thing? Okay, we've got less than a month and we're going to be live. Where's the excitement level? Where's the animosity, the angst? Where are you at?
Oh, I'm excited. I mean, you guys know me. I'm excited, but I'm more excited for practice tomorrow than talking about a month from now. As a coach, you want to get to practice and work. And we've only had 6 practices. I think you got to put that in perspective. So, Chad, I know you want me to get on here and make all these bold predictions after 6 practices.
I mean,
but no, I am excited. This has been, like you said, there's transition when you lose, David DeJulius and Landers Nolly and Jeremiah Davenport and Mike Adams. I mean, there's going to be some transition there. But I value those guys. Shoot, I called David DeJulius 2 days ago and told him how much I missed him. I tried to FaceTime Landers yesterday, and we missed each other. So I do miss those guys. We'll have some things to overcome, especially as you mentioned on the offensive end. But I do think that we did a nice job of adding the right kind of mix of older and younger players between our incoming freshmen and our transfers. And then we have a really solid nucleus of returning players, and some of which had key roles last year and were young and talented and are kind of, poised to step into bigger roles now. So I'm really excited, not just about this team, but about transitioning this program into the Big 12. I think this team is more built in a way that we should be able to play even more so the way that I'd love to play as a head coach. And that part's got me really excited. They're continuing to take steps in like building the kind of day-to-day culture and approach that we want to have on a day-to-day basis. That's improved from last year. And I don't at this time, and I don't say that to knock anybody from the team last year. I say that, last year's team helped us move forward a little bit, and this team is starting ahead of that. And so I think that says a lot about guys like David, right, who really invested in the program the last couple of years. So there's a lot of really positive stuff going on. But shoot, guys, everybody's good in October. I mean, there's 350-something Division I teams, and everybody's got a great team in October. My goal is just we got to get better tomorrow and wake up and do it again the next day, and we'll see where we are when it tips up for real here in November.
As you were scheduling your out-of-conference, what do you think took more precedence in scheduling that out-of-conference? Was it the roster turnover, or was it the fact that you're transitioning into the Big 12?
Yeah, the Big 12, as much as anything. And I want to be clear. I think sometimes you could look at our non-conference schedule. I said this in a press conference the other day, and you can look at it and you go, man, they're at home a lot. They really aren't on the road a whole lot. We're on the road at Xavier. We're, playing a neutral game against Dayton. We're going to Howard, which I think is really neat, to go play against the HBCU in Washington, D.C. over Thanksgiving or just right after Thanksgiving. So but we're not on the road a lot. I think that's by design. I mean, look at the travel in the Big 12. We're going to be all over the country, and
Right.
even different way than we were in the American. Longer trips, harder turnarounds, playing
Better teams.
playing in really hostile environments in the best league in America. We wanted to be home, so we didn't wear our team out early, especially because we hadn't been through it before. Like, nobody in our program's been through that before, so that was strategic. And we wanted the right kind of balance going into the Big 12 of challenging ourselves, learning about ourselves, but also maybe being able to play through and learn and develop our team a little bit. Now, I think sometimes you look at some of those teams and you go, oh man, like that's a lower level team. But if you really dive in, and this is where I rely on you guys to be the sounding piece for us here, like a lot of those teams are more dangerous than their names. A lot of those teams maybe played in the NCAA tournament a year ago or are picked to play in the NCAA tournament this year. So some of those games, that the names may not be as big as a Power 5 school, but those games could be very difficult, and people could understand that later in the year as those teams compete to win league championships. So it's not as easy as a schedule as people think, but trying to find games to play at home and stay in the area was very strategic with the move to the Big 12.
You're also in a situation where you had last year, I believe, through 36 games, you had 11 like Power 5, high major, whatever you want to call level opponents. And this year you have 22. You're doubling the number of those games. So if you schedule another 4, like you're gonna have 25 of 31. Like it's not always. Tom Izzo has even had trouble doing that, where he's done that in some years, where he's gone
Right.
25, 26, 27.
Yeah, it's very logical, right? And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's a lot of logic there. Where schedule is going to be at the end of the year when they do analytics of who had the most difficult schedule. Every team in the Big 12 is going to be in the top 30 in America. That's just what it is. So it's not like we're not playing games in the non-conference. I mean, there are 3 BCS games in the non-conference, and there are some very difficult games on the schedule otherwise. So there still is some good balance there. And then, as you mentioned, the Big 12 has been the hardest league in America, and every analytical measurement there says that. We'll have enough Tier 1 games for the NCAA tournament committee. Everybody in our league will. I mean, West Virginia goes, what was it last year? 7-11 in league play, 7-11 in conference play, and they were an NCAA tournament bid, and that's because of the strength of the league. So yeah, we're going to be challenged. As you said, 22 BCS games. That hasn't happened at Cincinnati since the Big East days. So it's certainly a transition, but one we're excited about.
What's the biggest change that you've felt since entering the Big 12 so far?
Well, we hadn't played a game in the Big 12 yet. So
just around campus, around the team, and all of that.
I think it's really impacted recruiting, and you could feel that right away when it was announced that it impacted the recruits that were being recruited to play in that league. I've said this privately a bunch, and I have no problem saying it publicly. This spring in the transfer portal, it was a big deal. With Jizzle James and Rayvon, their incoming class, it was a really big deal. The previous spring, when we were recruiting transfers like Landers and Kalu and Rob, it wasn't a big deal at all because even guys that would have had multiple years of eligibility, they didn't want to see past that next season. So it really impacted recruiting. I can feel that it's impacted our current players and our current roster, that they feel the energy and excitement. Certainly seen other programs, in the athletic department within their fall season, whether it's football games or you're driving, past the women's soccer game tonight. I think they're playing Oklahoma State. I mean, it's different when you're in a league like this. And that's not knocking the American, but the level of opponent, the name, the recognition is just different, and you feel it everywhere.
One of the things about losing 4 of your top 5 scorers is not only that you're losing, guys that put up production, you're losing guys that had sweat equity, had skin in the game. Where are you at in terms of the leadership developing on this roster behind the scenes, because you did have some strong personalities in that locker room last year that aren't here anymore.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting over the course of the next month and even throughout non-conference play to watch that evolve. But because it's an interesting dynamic now. It's so much different, as you guys know, than it was 4 or 5 years ago, as we talked about when we started. You know, guys like Simas Lukosius played 2 years in the Big East with a very significant role on his team. It's not like we have inexperienced players or
Right.
CJ Frederick. I mean, like he's played at the highest level in NCAA tournament teams and had major roles on those teams. I mean, I could keep going on. I won't talk about every player, but we have incoming players that have great experience, that have great maturity, and they have leadership qualities, but they are still new players, right? So kind of watching them kind of find their place within our program from that standpoint is very interesting, just like it is finding their role on the floor. And then you have some returning players that put a lot of, as you mentioned, equity into our program with their commitment and their work ethic and their heart and their mind, and guys like Victor Locken and Odi Iguama and John Newman. And I could talk through all the returning guys, and they have some leadership qualities. So to see kind of how that takes shape over the course of the preseason and into the early part of the season, I think will be interesting. What I can tell you guys is to date, and we had them all summer, all fall, and about a week of practice now, there's zero selfishness. I mean, they all seem to be about winning. They seem to be a really high character group. And I say it's all to date because we got a lot we got to go through. They all seem to want to be good. That they want to have great practices. They want to work hard. And I think what I've seen is that from top to bottom, everybody has some kind of leadership role because, shoot, on any team, if you'll focus on the mission of the team and sacrifice for that mission, and you'll lead yourself every day, you're a leader. And I think everybody can be a leader on every team. But I think what you're really asking are who are the guys that are the most outstanding leaders of the group. And I think it'll be by committee a little bit. John Newman, is a guy that really comes to mind, because he's been with us for a couple of years and been through a lot. And he works really hard, and the guys respect him. But I think it could be a number of guys with the incoming guys and the returning guys.
You're going into the Big 12, as you described, the number one conference in America, with 2 point guards that have never dribbled a ball in a Division I game. Like that, you have to be excited at their talent and the potential of what they bring, because I think both are high major point guards. But there's also a learning curve on the experience and everything that those guys are going to have to learn going forward. How do you feel as a coach with that excitement of knowing what they can and will be, but you're not there yet because they haven't gone through those wars yet?
Well, their ability and their approach and their toughness, I'm through the roof excited.
Right.
And I felt that way recruiting them. And whatever I felt recruiting them, we're talking about Day and Jizzle. I mean, whatever I felt recruiting Day and Jizzle, I'm times 100 now. I mean, they're awesome.
They look like high major point guards. That's what they look like.
Yeah, and they're different, but they're not different in their approach every day. They're competitive as hell. They're making each other better every day in practice. So I'm super excited. Is there, some notion to the fact that they don't have experience at this level? Sure. I mean, that's real. That's obvious. That. I know that. My mom knows that. But
I wasn't breaking anything new here.
Yeah, but so I think what I've tried to do, number one, I try to spend time with all the guys. It's very different than football. I mean, you can have like real deep relationships with all 15, 16 players. So I try to do that with everybody, but I will spend more time from a basketball sense with Day and Jizzle, than anybody else on the team, because we got to get them up to speed in a fast way. Their abilities, what it needs to be, their mentalities, what it needs to be, the things that they have to improve on between now and when we start conference play are things that can be coached and things that can be learned. So we'll spend we will as a group, and then I'll spend extra time with those guys every day. And it'll be that way, throughout the whole year. but I'll tell you, they're both good enough. I mean, I watched a lot of basketball, been around a lot of basketball. They're both good enough, and I'm excited about their future here.
You talked in your presser on Tuesday about Jameel and his loss of 45 pounds, which is absolutely insane. But who else this summer has really impressed you in what they've done, either in the locker room itself or just being around the program, just in a development sort of way?
Everybody that returned impressed me. And I always give credit to them first, because we were crazy about our player development program here, and we make it really clear in recruiting it's a priority for us. We've made it very clear the last 2 years that if you don't love working and developing and you don't have a passion to get better, this isn't the right place for you. And I'll say this to the day I die. If you were in this program the last 2 years and you watched the way Dave DeJulius approached it, and it didn't rub off on you, you're not a human being. I mean, his commitment to his body, to his rest and recovery, to his skill development. I mean, it was like watching like a college version of Kobe Bryant. You hear all the stories about Kobe Bryant training at all hours. I mean, we'd show up to a 6 a.m. practice, and we do a little bit of that at the start of the year to develop some toughness and discipline. We show up to a 6 a.m. practice, and the coaching staff walks in at 5:15 to meet before practice, and David's has been in the full sweat, and we don't know how long he's been there. So his mentality, and I think the way that we approach it as a staff, is rubbed off here. And I give, again, those guys that have been in the program credit for helping us get here. But now we have a entire roster full of guys that are ate up with improvement. I'm proud of the job our staff does to help them improve. And then from the strength conditioning side, there's nobody better than Mike Rayfield. I mean, people think it's just a line in recruiting. I mean, I can't imagine there's a better strength coach in college athletics and the NBA. I can't imagine there's anybody better. So you combine all those things. I mean, neat things are happening with our players' development. So to single out one guy, Aaron, would be totally unfair. I mean, it would be unfair. I'd almost say, I think Chad asked a question in the press conference about Dan Skillings and just seeing him. He looks so physically different. His skill set's improved. Josh Reed's physically different. His skill set's improved. CJ Anthony, who has not played significant minutes the last 2 years. I mean, his body's improved. He's shooting at an incredibly high rate all summer. I could just kind of keep going down the line. So I'm very proud of. That's one of the things I'm the most proud about over the last 2 years is our player development. And again, credit first to our kids.
And me for telling you to call Mike Rayfield when you got the job.
It's like an old thing I learned as a college player that when somebody gives you an assist when you're running back down the floor, you point to thank the passer. So
I'm sure I wasn't the only one. You were like, what's the Grand Slam home run higher strength and conditioning coach? Call Mike Rayfield.
You were definitively not the only one, but I was going to give you all the credit tonight if you wanted it.
I'm good with that.
You bring in Josh Leffler from Johns Hopkins to help you out this year. What can you tell us about Josh Leffler that maybe we don't know about him so far?
Well, first off, I'm extremely excited about the whole staff. And it's kind of like when you ask about new players, and the first thing I'm thinking about is Victor Locken and Odi Iguama and John Newman. And, right. But I'm really excited about the continuity of our staff over the last couple of years. Andre Morgan and Chad Dollar and Jake Thielen and Matt Miller. And I won't name everybody, but we've had great continuity, and we're a much more functional and tighter knit staff now because we've been through some stuff together, like shared sacrifices, they say. And so I'm really excited about our staff dynamics. Everybody's in great roles. Everybody has a high level of responsibility in their roles and in embracing that. And so we're functioning at a crazy high level, relative to any other staff I've been a part of. And Josh is a great addition. He's very different than I am, and he's been a head coach for the last 6 years, which I really value. He's got a ton of energy. He's still got youthful energy and passion for basketball, which I think we're very similar in that way. He's been a head coach, which, you kind of, nobody really understands until they kind of sat in the seat. So it's nice to have somebody on the staff that's sat in the seat. And then the way he thinks about basketball, I guess is what I mean, is just very different than me. And so he brings an analytical approach to it that's very different. He probably thinks about offense in an extremely different way, but a healthy way for me. And he's a very good teacher on the court. So he's bringing a lot to our staff, and he's certainly going to help us on the basketball court.
How different has it been having 5 voices now allowed at practice? Now, for people that don't know, there were 3 bench assistants and the head coach. Those are the only people that were allowed to run a practice. And now they added 2 guys that aren't out on the road recruiting, but just at home coaching, which for your staff is Josh and then Jake Thielen. Do you sense a difference now that you've got 5 helping hands instead of 3?
Yeah, and give the NCAA credit for getting that right. It's been something that I've been outspoken about since the day I got into college coaching. Is we have all these staff members with basketball backgrounds and basketball knowledge, yet they're not allowed to coach. It again doesn't make logical sense. Maybe it's a little later than I would have liked them to make that change, but look, hey, we got that right now. A couple things. One, and you said it, there's 4 guys that have been able to coach until this year on the court at any time. And that's the head coach and the 3 assistants. Those were also the only 4 guys that were allowed to go out recruiting.
Yeah.
And so, you're out, the guys are out recruiting, and then now all of a sudden you don't have enough to coach practice. It's just, you're asking too much of everybody, right? So this summer in July, it was great because, Chad Dollar may be in Las Vegas for a AAU tournament. And instead of having to take the red eye back when he finishes that tournament on Sunday night to get there for practice the next morning, Monday, I can say to him, Chad, man, spend the night, spend the next day traveling, and don't kill yourself. That's healthy. Now, I did that. This scenario actually happened, and I show up to practice, and his ass was there because he still took the red eye. So I got some crazy guys around me, but I mean, it just makes a lot more sense. And then I think on the floor, it's more helpful. I think for us, and I could see how certain coaches could be overwhelmed having so many voices or teams, but for us, everybody has very specific roles on the court. We're very organized. So I think it's actually been great.
We had John Cunningham on last week, and he was able to talk to us about the new locker room updates. What are your thoughts on your brand new locker rooms?
I'm ready to get in them now. They're not ready yet. I've heard the end of the month here. You guys know Tobes, and so
a good source told me the end of the month is the target, right?
Yeah. So Tobler, who's one of you guys know I love all our former players, and Tobler's one of my favorites. But if we don't move into this damn things here soon, Tobler's going to go to the bottom of the list, right? Like, no, I'm just giving him a hard time. He's been unbelievable. It's been really neat to have a former player on the project, and they've done an unbelievable job. I'm really just giving them a hard time, but they've done an unbelievable job. I walked through this past week, carpet starting to go in, the ceiling stuff is starting to go in. The drywall's been up for a long time. So for the first time here over the last couple of weeks, you can see it developing. And fellas, it's going to be as good as anywhere in college basketball. We're super excited about it. I know our players can't wait to get in there.
Are you going to try one of those nap bunks at some point in time?
No, but my, I thought so much about when we were designing this locker room. I said, if I ever had this opportunity, I'd do it, because as a player, you'd finish class at like 1:00, and then you'd be, starting practice at 3:00, and you'd have that kind of limbo period. Do I go back to my room, or do I just go to the locker room? And so I'd go take a nap on the couch in the locker room, and you wake up and, people are flipping the lights on and putting music on. And I said, man, it'd be great if there was a place where guys could take a nap so they're not kind of caught in between things. Because people don't know this, but their schedules are incredible. What we ask our student athletes to do every day. I think sometimes of our fans, hopefully we'll do a good job of getting some snapshots of that on social media, but what they do every day is incredible. I mean, they're full-time jobs being college basketball players, and they're also going to school it's like they have 2 full-time jobs. And so trying to find ways to make life a little easier when they're in between things, I think that nap room will be a major hit for our players. I know it would have been for me as a player.
Well, we're getting long in the tooth here, so I want to let you go because you got practice to plan for tomorrow. There's the pen. I know you're looking at the clock and looking at me like, Brendel, come on, let's go. What will people expect when they watch? I know you're still learning a lot about this team, still figuring a lot of things out. You can play big, you can play small, you can play fast, you can grind it out. Hopefully, if everything goes your way, what will the 23-24 version of the Bearcats, what's their identity right now?
Well, defensively, there's so much rim presence. It allows us to get much more aggressive, in our half court man-to-man. So I think we're going to be able to take some more chances defensively with ball pressure and going after people a little bit because there's so much protection behind us. Yeah. So that's kind of the first thing I think of is we'll continue some of the foundation we built, that we're going to be a team that's going to build an identity based on that end of the floor. The positional size is awesome, guys. I mean, we could have lineups where, guys like John Newman and Dan Skillings and Josh Reed are your 2-3s. Like Seamus Luke. I mean, these guys are big and long and athletic. And, and then you could have monsters up front at the 4-5. So, I think about that first, and we've worked really hard at that. The second thing is we have the ability, we have the personnel. You have a coach that obsesses about it every night and a staff that does. We got to dominate the backboards. Not just the defensive glass, and you want to keep people to one shot, but you want to dominate the offensive glass. And, I don't care if we miss good shots, because when you take a good shot, usually you give your teammates the opportunity to crash and anticipate getting to the offensive board. And we have a bunch of guys that are physically capable of get it, have the mentality to get it, and the ability to get it. So we should be a great rebounding team on both sides of the floor. And then offensively, I've always wanted to play really fast. Most of the teams I've coached in 12 years have played at a really good pace of play. This team will be able to get faster, I believe, and we've worked at that all summer, than anything that I've been able to coach here at Cincinnati. I mean, we should be able to play at a really fast pace and get some easy baskets in transition. But as I've said to everybody, getting up the floor fast and getting easy baskets is going to be something we value, and this team could do that. That doesn't mean we're going to jack bad shots. I'm fine if we're just putting pressure on the defense all night, but we turn some offense over. Because the last thing I'd say is there's a high level of intelligence in this team. The passing is better. Seamus is an elite passer, really smart player. CJ Frederick is a really smart player. Josh Reed, is not a freshman anymore. He's and I could keep Vic is a really, really smart basketball player. And so I think the ball movement and passing and execution will be significantly better, than the last couple of years. So maybe that gives you, but we're not changing, right? We're just kind of evolving and pivoting within those basic foundational things that we've established the last 2 years.
Yeah. When you have 7 new guys, you got a new look. Your team's going to look different than it did a year ago. That's just part of it. Finally, we'll get to one question here, and we'll put you on the spot.
All right.
Any update on the jerseys?
Is that Matt, the guy that asked the question? Am I reading that right?
Matt, yeah.
Matt, here's the best part is that these 2 guys on the screen with me right here asked me that before we went on air. So you're not alone. We're still waiting, and I think I'm excited about that. Everybody knows how excited I am about Jordan. I mean, my gosh, I'm probably more excited than I should be. At 40 years old,
right?
It's embarrassing. I shouldn't care this much, but I do.
You just called Mike and said, "Hey, let's get this done," right? Like
exactly, yeah. But we didn't get the deal done till late in the spring, and so this is what I hope fans will understand. We've already ordered our stuff for next season by now. Like the lead times.
Normally, right?
The lead times for ordering stuff for a year out. When you order through Jordan Brand. So, when we went there in May, it's been a mad dash just to try to get up to speed, and we're not even quite there yet. I give our players a lot of credit because, they've been crazy patient and were patient throughout the summer, never made one complaint. And then Jordan Brand's been great about getting us what they can get us in a short period of time. And we finally have gotten some cool stuff in here over the last couple of weeks. So people will be seeing that. But I will answer the question, Matt. The jerseys are not in yet. We hope to have at least one version, and we're going to have multiple jerseys, but we hope to have one version of a jersey by Media Day, Big 12 Media Day, which I think is not next week, but the week after, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully within 2 weeks, we'll be able to unveil at least one of the jerseys. I don't know if it'll be the primary jersey or an alternate, but we just try to get one in so our guys have something to wear at Media Day. But I'm excited to get back in the jump, man.
All right. Appreciate you, Coach. Thank you for coming on. We always enjoy you taking some time out for us and get to plan and practice for tomorrow.
Anything for Bearcat Journal. You guys just keep pumping up this Bearcat program, because our recruits like to follow you guys. So
that's what we do. That's what we're here for.
Give us some help there. I think I can say that without talking any specifics. So give us help and support there.
Hopefully you got a big smile tomorrow afternoon.
Aaron, you're the best. Chad, you're okay. And no, I'm just kidding. I love some Chad Brendel. I'm going to get back to doing what I love to do and getting ready for practice tomorrow morning.
All right. See you, Coach. Thank you.
All right, boys.
There you go. How about that for a little Thursday night live show surprise? A little Wes Miller action.
Makes our job easy.
Yeah. Just kind of hang out. Chad, you're okay. That's the nicest thing anybody said about me today. That I'm okay. I'll take that.
Fair enough.
You wanna take some questions or just call it like hey, we had Wes on for 40 minutes. Let's get the hell out of here.
I don't really see any questions in the chat. I know that there's almost 100 people.
Yeah, it's a lot of people
here.
So,
but
we'll give them 2 or 3 minutes. If you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. Any reaction to that conversation with Wes? I think we went a little different direction that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't press conference questions. It was more conversational.
Well, I mean, I would have loved to actually do the show that he alluded to for 45 minutes to an hour where we discuss nothing but NIL and the changes that they've had to
right.
I had so many questions loaded, ready to ask, well, when are the guys getting trucks?
Right. When does everybody get an F-150
with custom paint jobs? We've been talking, not we, but social media or even mainstream news has been talking so much about UFOs. Is Aziz an actual documented alien from outer space? So I had these questions.
You'd have had to put your tinfoil hat on for that.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot. And then Coach probably leaves, but, and then I'm not the best. But, those were some of the questions I would have liked to get to, but it just respectful of his time.
I appreciate that. It's nice.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I mean, I guess we don't have any questions. I appreciate everybody for popping in tonight. It was something we had been working on with practice schedules. Like, he had just got home right before we went live. So it was always like, hopefully this is going to happen, but I didn't want to promote it too heavily just in case things went long or they were watching film and he couldn't get back. But he always does us a solid. He hit us up from a coffee shop in Philadelphia recruiting Dan Skillings. That actually happened, if you're new here. Like and subscribe while you're here. I'll wait. Go ahead. There's got to be a couple of you that aren't subscribed at some point. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in. That was really good stuff from Wes and good perspective on where the program's at, coaching staff, the team, the outlook for the upcoming season. And I'll address this because I'm sure people will ask. We didn't get to the waiver stuff because we don't know anything. It was covered in the press conference on Tuesday. It's been talked about ad nauseum. But Cincinnati does not have a decision from the NCAA on either of the waivers. That could come at any time, but it has not come in yet. So I know that's kind of the question everybody wants to be asked, but there's just nothing new there yet to report. And when there is, we'll report it. It'll be out there. Darren wants to know about Josh Reed. He's had a very, very good summer. The interesting part is that that's a crowded little group right there in the middle of the roster between CJ Frederick and Dan Skillings and John Newman, Seamus Lukosius, Rayvon, Josh. Like, they're all kind of in that same bunch, 2, 3, 4. He's played well. He's had a really good summer. Let's see where he comes out as these battles go on in October. All right, let's wrap it up. Looks like we're dwindling in numbers and we're at 45 minutes. That's about where we want to be for this show anyway. So thank you, everybody. That is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya.